Release the panic of fleeing hours. A lesson in impermanence. You are lying awake right now, carrying a sharp, quiet ache in your chest, staring into the dark as midnight passes, watching the years slip through your fingers like water, feeling a sudden, terrifying panic over how quickly time is moving away. Maybe you spent moments today looking at an aging parent, a growing child, or an old photograph, gripped by a cold, suffocating dread that everything you cherish is steadily vanishing into the past. The room around you is still, cool, and filled with a rich, earthy calm. The subtle, grounding aromas of raw sheep's wool, lanolin, dried indigo leaves, cedar smoke, and steeping chestnut tea drift softly through the night, while the steady mattress beneath you cradles your tired bones, offering a sheltered sanctuary that asks nothing of your fleeing hours. Dear friend, this overwhelming fear of temporal passage does not mean your heart is fragile or flawed. Nor does it mean you are helpless against the flow of time. You are merely like an anxious weaver who catches the wooden shuttle in midair, attempting to freeze the thread because he fears the spool will soon be empty. You do not have to conquer your mortality before morning comes, nor do you need to force your mind to welcome loss to earn deep rest tonight. Your life is not a fading dream destined to leave you cold. And nothing in this quiet room expects you to stop the loom with your bare hands. Right now, you are gently invited to release your desperate grip on the passing hours, allowing your lived moments to lay down softly into a dense, protective weave. A surprising, deeply comforting truth emerges from ancient Buddhist reflection when we face the grief of fleeting years. We often treat the passage of time as a cruel thief that steals our happiness, imagining that if we could only hold a single hour still, we would finally know lasting safety. Yet contemplative wisdom shows us that time is not a force of destruction, but the very movement that weaves raw thread into a warm, protective tapestry. A spool of wool locked in a dark drawer can never shelter a family from the winter cold. It is only when the thread leaves the shuttle and crosses the warp that it creates a dense, felted blanket capable of protecting a home for generations. True spiritual freedom is not found in catching the shuttle in midair. Real peace arrives when you realize that your love is the fabric itself, growing richer, warmer, and more resilient with every thread that passes through your hands. The panicked mind mistakenly insists that because a moment passes, it is lost forever. It desperately tries to freeze time, clutching at memories like loose fibers, convincing you that impermanence is an enemy that renders your life hollow. But a weaver working in an alpine valley does not weep when a golden thread unwinds from her boxwood shuttle. She watches the fiber interlock smoothly with the warp, knowing that the thread has not disappeared into nothingness, but has transformed into the very structure of a blanket that will cradle her children long after the loom goes quiet. Think of how much emotional strength you have burned by trying to hold the moving shuttle still. Maybe you have felt this too, lying awake with a tight throat and a racing mind, mourning seasons that ended years ago, fearing the day when loved ones will no longer be beside you, feeling an agonizing grief for moments that are still happening right now. Trying to preserve your life by halting the loom only leaves your frame exposed to the cold wind. What if, for these quiet hours, we set down the urge to trap the thread? What if we allow your moments to lay down softly into the warp, forming a dense, sheltering weave around your heart tonight? Let the small, guarded muscles in your face and jaw soften completely. Release the tight guard you have been holding around your ribs, your stomach, and your lower back. Feel the broad, firm support beneath your body, carrying the full, heavy weight of your frame without asking you to halt the passage of time tonight. Listen to the long, quiet cadence of your breath moving through your chest, slow, smooth, and completely unhurried in the darkness. There is no need to regulate the air or force your lungs. Let your breath move like a wooden treadle clicking gently against oak planks, steady, natural, and entirely at ease. Perhaps you learned early in life to view impermanence as a threat, building a habit of intense vigilance whenever a sweet season began to change. In the tradition of Zen wisdom, we do not view the passing of time as a tragedy that robs you of meaning. It is seen as the sacred, necessary movement that allows love to take physical form. You do not need to guarantee an eternal afternoon to be worthy of profound rest tonight. You need only to permit your spirit to yield to the natural weave of this hour, so that every breath you draw becomes a gentle thread of trust in the tapestry of your life. In a short while, we will travel to a high mountain loom house perched over a mist-filled valley, where a young weaver sits frozen in the cold because he tried to stop his shuttle from moving across the frame. But right now, let your physical frame yield to the simple, unconditional safety of this quiet room. The walls around you are solid, keeping out the mountain frost, and the dark air here is a calm, neutral shelter that permits your tired mind to drop its heavy tools. You do not have to solve the mystery of time, protect your loved ones from aging, or secure the future before dawn arrives. Your true peace was never dependent on freezing the clock. Your life was born like a vibrant woolen thread, crafted to move, interlock, and build an enduring warmth out of every fleeting moment it touches along its way. Let the tight tension around your shoulders melt away entirely. Let your fingers uncurl slowly upon the bed, your hands soft and still, like polished boxwood shuttles resting beside a quiet loom. There is no fleeting hour you must capture in this dark room tonight, no passing moment you must trap, and no thread short enough to leave your heart unprotected right now. You have reached the end of the day's long labor, and your present weave is completely warm enough to shelter your rest. As we move deeper into the quiet night ahead, remember that your true nature is like a hand-woven tapestry cradled in a high valley. It does not grow poor when the thread unwinds from the spool. The passing hours of your life simply interlock with love, leaving your core presence dense, warm, and profoundly whole in the quiet dark. Let the tired muscles around your throat and chest melt into the darkness. Let your legs grow heavy and motionless upon the bed, your ankles and feet loose and completely supported by the mattress. There is no temporal grief you must solve in this room tonight, no fear of aging you must carry alone, and no passage of time fast enough to pull apart the warm tapestry of your spirit right now. You are resting within your own completed weave, and your inner fabric is completely safe enough for you to lay down your panic. Up in the misted folds of the northern ridge, where the high pine trees meet the steep slate cliffs, the air always held the scent of wet wool, crushed cedar, dried indigo leaves, and steeping chestnut tea. In this quiet clearing sat a broad timber loom house, its heavy cedar beams dark with age and wood smoke. Inside worked a young weaver named Wren, whose heart was continuously consumed by a heavy, silent dread. Wren lived with his aging grandmother. The person who had raised him taught him to spin fleece and held his world together since childhood. Recently, he had begun to notice the slow, fragile shifts in her step, the silvering of her hair, and the tremor in her hands as she poured tea at dusk. Every time Wren saw a strand of wool leave his shuttle to enter the loom, a wave of cold terror washed over his chest. In his mind, every pass of the thread was not a sign of creation, but a terrifying countdown. He began to equate the unwinding of the spool with the unwinding of his grandmother's life, convinced that when the thread ran out, everything he loved would vanish into cold darkness. To stop this terrifying passage of time, Wren made a desperate, silent choice. He stopped weaving altogether. He sat at the massive oak loom, holding the heavy boxwood shuttle tightly against his chest, refusing to press the wooden treadle or pass the thread across the warp. He believed that if he kept the shuttle motionless, if he caught the spool in midair and locked it in his hands, he could somehow freeze time itself. He thought he could protect his grandmother from aging by preventing the day from moving forward. The loom grew quiet. The fire in the hearth burned down to gray ash, and the unfinished blanket hung limp and frozen on the frame. The room grew freezing cold. Drafts crept through the timber floorboards, and Wren sat shivering in the dark, clutching his wooden shuttle with white knuckles, exhausted, terrified, and completely paralyzed by grief. Sitting on a low stool near the stone hearth was Sister Aoi, an elder weaver and cloth stainer who had spent 60 years working the mountain looms. Sister Aoi wore a simple robe dyed deep indigo, her silver hair coiled neatly at her neck, her skin lined like weathered oak bark. Her eyes were deep, calm, and held no fear of the winter winds. She had watched Wren's frantic, silent struggle for days, observing how he tried to fight the moving hours by freezing his hands. As the evening shadows lengthened across the floor and the frost began to bloom along the paper window panes, Sister Aoi stood up softly. Her wool sandals made a quiet, dry whisper against the oak planks, she walked over to the cold loom where Ren sat frozen, his chest heaving with silent, terrified breaths. She did not scold him for letting the fire die, nor did she order him to finish his work. Instead, she reached into her deep sleeve and pulled out a hand-carved boxwood weaving shuttle, fitted with a polished bronze spindle that held a fresh spool of rich amber-dyed wool. Sister Aoi placed her warm, calloused hand over Rin's locked fingers. Gently, without force, she eased his grip open, taking the cold, empty shuttle from his palms and replacing it with the boxwood shuttle holding the bronze spindle. Sister Aoi guided Ren's trembling hands down to the oak treadles beneath the frame. She asked him to press his foot softly onto the lower pedal, opening a clean gap between the taut warp threads. Ren hesitated, his breath catching in his throat. He looked at the spool of amber wool, terrified that passing it across the frame would speed his grandmother's aging. Sister Aoi leaned close, her voice a soft, low hum like the mountain wind through the pines. She asked Ren if holding the spool still inside his fist was keeping his grandmother warm tonight. Sister Aoi pointed to the unfinished blanket hanging on the loom, then turned toward the corner where Ren's grandmother sat shivering under a thin, worn shawl. The room was bitter cold, and the draft from the valley was growing stronger by the minute. Sister Aoi guided Ren's right hand, helping him flick the boxwood shuttle cleanly through the open warp. The polished bronze spindle spun with a quiet, singing hum, leaving a smooth line of amber wool resting across the threads. Sister Aoi then took the wooden reed, pressing the new thread down firmly into the weave, interlocking it tightly with the fibers before it. As the amber thread settled into the fabric, a subtle, unmistakable shift occurred in the room. The dense wool caught the air, blocking the cold draft that was seeping through the frame. The blanket grew slightly longer, slightly thicker, holding the warmth of the room right where the thread laid down. Sister Aoi looked into Ren's wide, tear-filled eyes. She told him that holding the shuttle motionless inside his hand did not pause time, nor did it shield his loved ones from the winter air. It only left them exposed, freezing in an unfinished house, while he burned his life away in terrified resistance. Sister Aoi explained that the spool does not exist to be saved in a dark drawer. Its true purpose, its only true beauty, is to unwind, to cross the frame, and to turn into a dense, felted tapestry that shelters those we love long after the shuttle goes quiet. The passing of time is not a theft. It is the very motion that weaves love into something real, warm, and lasting. Ren sat motionless at the loom, his fingers resting against the smooth amber wool of the boxwood shuttle. He looked at the row of amber thread he had just woven, then looked over at his grandmother, who drew a soft, warm breath as the draft lessened. A sudden, deep wave of emotional recognition washed over his heart, breaking through the ice of his panic. He saw clearly how his desperate attempt to freeze time had not saved a single moment, but had only filled his home with cold, paralyzing fear. He recognized that by refusing to let the thread unwind, he was depriving his own life and his grandmother's life of the very warmth and comfort they were meant to share right now. Yet as the stars began to glitter through the high timber vents, and the mountain night settled deeply over the loom house, a quiet uncertainty still lingered in Ren's chest. He understood now that he must let the shuttle move across the frame, but he did not yet know how his heart could witness the spool grow smaller without falling back into the dark well of fear. This quiet realization, beside the bronze-spindled shuttle, does not expect you to turn off your love, nor does it ask you to become unfeeling toward the fleeting beauty of the people and moments you cherish. Ancient contemplative wisdom has never been about freezing your heart into stone, or pretending that watching those you love grow older brings no ache to your chest. It does not expect you to look at a silvering hair or a softening stride with cold, distant detachment. Feeling a poignant pang of sorrow as seasons change is an entirely human, natural response. It carries its own soft honesty, much like the quiet creak of heavy oak treadles when a winter night settles over the valley. Mourning the passage of a sweet afternoon simply shows how deeply you treasure the warmth moving through your life. When a moment passes or a loved one shifts into a new season of life, a simple, natural transition occurs in the world around you. That passing moment carries its own quiet reality, like a single amber thread leaving the boxwood shuttle to lay across the warp. It brings your awareness directly into the present hour, asking for gentle presence, warm affection, and tender care. Experiencing the natural movement of time or noticing the shift in another's strength is a natural part of living in a world made of soft, changing fiber. Yet look closely at what happens inside your mind in the quiet hours after you notice time slipping past. This is where the heavy, crushing weight of temporal panic builds its silent fortress, driven by an underlying fear that impermanence will leave our lives hollow and cold. Our mind begins to clutch at the moving spool with panicked force. We lie awake in the dark, mentally wrestling with the clock, desperately trying to catch the shuttle in midair, furious that life cannot remain forever frozen in a single afternoon. We take a simple natural movement of time and turn it into an agonizing internal war, coating our natural love in a brittle glaze of panic that leaves us shivering in an unfinished room. This desperate refusal to let the thread unwind is what ancient reflection recognizes as the real source of our deepest suffering. In our modern nightly lives, this internal struggle is not an abstract concept. It is that tight, anxious knot in your chest that insists you are failing because you cannot stop the hours from moving. It is the exhausting demand that time must freeze its rhythm to prove that your love is safe, meaningful, and real. Consider what actually happens when you force your spirit to fight the movement of time. The shifting of a season or the aging of a frame was a real, natural occurrence, needing only warmth, presence, and gentle care. But by continuously insisting that time should stand still, your mind transforms a natural transition into an ongoing emotional ordeal. The original passage of time was simple weather moving through the valley. Your frantic panic, your fear of tomorrow, and your desperate clutching at yesterday are the extra drafts created by your own attempt to trap the shuttle inside your fist. Deep spiritual insight shows us that most of the heavy, suffocating sorrow you carry tonight does not stem from the passage of time itself. It grows from the fierce, guarded demand that life must never move its threads. It comes from treating impermanence as a thief that must be fought, rather than the very motion that weaves your love into a tangible form. The moving hours are simply thread passing through the frame. That thread carries no inherent power to freeze your heart, but gripping the shuttle in panic will always leave your house exposed to the cold wind. When we cultivate a gentle, forgiving reverence for the present thread, we are not abandoning our loved ones, nor are we inviting loss. True peace is simply the soft, courageous willingness to honor the moment you inhabit right now. It is the willingness to notice the familiar urge to freeze the clock and to whisper to yourself, "My love is not broken by the passing hour, and this thread deserves my warmth, not my fear." When you drop the tight grip and allow the thread to lay down softly into the warp, an immense soothing relief flows through your entire chest. This is the profound comfort of deep presence made real in your spirit. Self-forgiveness means recognizing that a woven blanket holds a warmth that a locked spool inside a drawer could never offer. When you stop fighting the natural movement of time, the scary, panic-driven stories about an empty future lose their grip, dissolving into the quiet space of your present room. The amber thread settles into the fabric in the mountain loom house, not because it fought the shuttle, but because it allowed itself to interlock with the weave. The winter draft can blow against the outer wall, but the dense, felted wool keeps the room inside completely warm and sheltered. In the exact same way, when you stop trying to trap your moments in a frozen fist, your heart recovers a quiet, unshakable dignity. The need to force time to stand still falls away, leaving a grounded, peaceful presence that knows how to love within the living weave. This grounded presence is your true, enduring shelter. It was never created by a frozen clock, nor was it diminished when a season shifted into the past. The quiet awareness inside you that observes the passing hours is completely untouched by time itself. It remains vast, warm, and steady, like the heavy oak loom house standing protected under the starlit mountain sky. Offering soft reverence to your passing moments is not an act of surrender to loss. True love for your life is simply the willingness to sit within its living fabric, trusting that its value was never tied to freezing the frame. It is the quiet courage to say, "My life has woven many threads of beauty, and I will honor this present strand tonight. Slowly, a deep, restorative understanding settles into your bones. You begin to see that allowing your moments to pass, interlock, and build a lasting memory is not a tragic defeat. It is the natural, noble unfolding of a life that has loved deeply and created a shelter of true warmth. Surrendering the impossible battle against time is not a loss. It is the sacred doorway to discovering the timeless peace that has always lived within your heart. As you lie here in the soft sanctuary of your bed, feeling the firm mattress supporting your spine, you can feel how accessible this inner ease really is. It does not require you to solve the mystery of impermanence, nor does it demand that you feel entirely fearless before you can rest. It requires only a single moment of soft permission, a gentle loosening of the tight guard around your heart, allowing your life to weave its threads like a warm tapestry under a quiet night sky. In a short while, we will practice a very simple way of sensing this dense, resilient fabric within your own physical body. But even right now, as you listen to these gentle words, notice how the air enters and leaves your lungs without asking for any forced effort. Your breath moves quietly through the dark, supported by the steady atmosphere of the room, natural, calm, and completely whole, exactly as you are. Now, if it feels comfortable for your frame in this moment, allow your posture to settle smoothly into the mattress beneath you. There is no special way you are required to hold your limbs, and no rigid stillness you need to force upon your weary body tonight. You might let your arms drop loosely along your sides, or perhaps rest one soft hand over your chest, wherever your shoulders feel most unburdened. If your eyelids are still hovering open, perhaps you can let them sink closed, inviting the cool dark of the room to envelop your vision. Nothing in this quiet space is asking you to stand guard, stop the clock, or fix the changing seasons. Draw a slow, gentle breath in through your nose, letting the cool air expand your ribs, and then let it release softly through your mouth, allowing your body weight to sink into the bed like heavy, felted wool resting upon an oak bench. You do not need to count your inhalations or regulate their depth. Simply permit your lungs to move air the way a wooden treadle clicks softly against floorboards, steady, natural, and completely unhurried. With every soft exhale, perhaps you can feel a subtle loosening in the tight muscles around your jaw, your neck, and the delicate space behind your heart. If a cold, heavy fear about time remains in your chest, that is completely okay as well. You do not need to fight that physical feeling or force it to vanish. Even noticing that old urge to trap the shuttle without judging yourself is a moment of deep, gentle restoration. As you lie here in the dark, allow your attention to turn softly toward one specific fear of temporal passage or impermanence that made you feel mournful or anxious today. It might be a quiet panic about a loved one growing older, a sudden sadness over a season that slipped away, or a heavy dread about your own aging. Do not try to solve that fear right now, and do not attempt to construct a plan to hold back tomorrow before morning comes. Simply let that memory sit quietly in the warm light of your awareness, like a spool of unspun wool resting on a weaver's table. Perhaps you can give a very soft, silent name to what your mind is doing. You might whisper to yourself, "This is the habit of trying to catch the shuttle in midair." Or perhaps, "This is my heart fearing the empty spool." By naming this internal pattern with a gentle, forgiving voice, you step back from the edge of emotional panic. You begin to observe the pain of fleeting hours without letting it pull your spirit into cold isolation. Now, if it feels right, bring to your mind's eye the image of that hand-carved boxwood shuttle fitted with its polished bronze spindle. See its smooth, amber-tinted wood, worn soft by decades of careful hands, resting quietly inside a high mountain loom house. Smell the surrounding atmosphere of sheep's wool, dried indigo leaves, and cedar smoke drifting through the rafters. Imagine taking that heavy, agonizing dread about the passage of time and placing it directly into the smooth wooden groove of the boxwood shuttle. You do not need to grip the shuttle with white knuckles, nor do you need to hide it inside a dark drawer. You simply permit the fear to rest within the wood, trusting the frame around it to hold its natural weight. Watch what happens in your imagination when a gentle, compassionate hand guides the shuttle across the loom. Picture the polished bronze spindle spinning softly, leaving a long, vibrant thread of amber wool, laying smoothly across the open warp. You do not need to throw the shuttle with force. You simply watch the thread unwinding, crossing the frame, and resting softly against the threads before it. Notice how the wooden reed comes down with a gentle rhythmic tap, pressing the new amber thread down into the weave. The individual fiber does not disappear into cold darkness. It interlocks tightly with the surrounding wool, building a thick, resilient blanket that grows longer and warmer with every single pass, creating a dense shield of comfort that protects the entire house from the winter wind. If your mind strays back into its old habit of trying to freeze time or clutching at yesterday, there is no need to feel disappointed in yourself. Your mind has been trying to protect your loved ones from harm for a very long time, and old habits of fighting impermanence do not vanish in a single hour. Whenever you catch yourself trying to catch the shuttle in midair again, simply notice that movement with a soft, forgiving heart. You can quietly say to yourself, "My mind is trying to stop the loom again," and then imagine letting the thread lay down into the warp once more. You can return to this warm, protective tapestry whenever you are ready, as many times as you need tonight. There is no perfect peace you must achieve before you are permitted to fall asleep. You do not need to solve the mystery of aging, nor do you need to demonstrate that you are completely fearless before dawn arrives. Healing your relationship with time is not a sudden event where all sorrow disappears forever. It is a series of quiet, hidden moments where you choose to set down the frozen shuttle and allow your awareness to weave into the present hour. Even a single breath spent, trusting the moving thread, permits your nervous system to taste the deep safety that lives beyond temporal fear. Feel the easy, natural movement of your chest continuing its silent work in the dark. Cool air fills your lungs, lifting your ribs slightly, and flows out with a long, soft fall. The solid weight of your head, your shoulders, and your legs is completely supported by the bed beneath you. You do not need to hold back tomorrow tonight. You do not need to prove to anyone that you can freeze time. The mattress is holding you, the room is enclosing you, and the warm tapestry of your life is completely strong enough to shelter your rest. In a short while, we will travel farther into the valley, where an old wool carder demonstrates how a birchwood reed comb with carved bone teeth helps a dyer settle threads into a soft, resilient cloth without crushing the fibers. But for now, allow yourself to remain right here in your bed. Let the boxwood shuttle move softly through your heart. Let your hands remain soft and still upon the sheets, knowing that nothing needs to be frozen, nothing needs to be forced, and that your unfolding story is completely safe enough to rest tonight. Down in the lower river valley, where the mountain stream slowed beside the stone dye sheds, the twilight air smelled of wet felt, crushed walnut hulls, river reeds, and cold evening mist. Working here was a young wool deer named Kenji, who tended the long wooden vats of madder root and walnut stain. Kenji was haunted by a fierce, unrelenting fear of forgetting. A year prior, his father, a legendary master carder who had taught Kenji the craft of hand spinning, had passed away after a long illness. Kenji lived in quiet dread that time would wash away his father's face, his voice, and the cherished memories of his own youth. In his desperate attempt to preserve every memory in absolute, unyielding detail, Kenji became obsessed with making his woven tapestries completely stiff and unmoving. He believed that if he packed the wool threads together tightly enough, no passage of time could alter the fabric or loosen the memories embedded within the fibers. To achieve this, Kenji forged a heavy, jagged iron reed comb. Whenever a new row of indigo or matted wool was laid across the warp, Kenji raised the iron tool with both hands and slammed it down with brutal, punishing force, beating the delicate threads together until they formed a rock-hard, rigid slab. This violent clutching produced a terrible result. Because Kenji compressed the fibers with such merciless force, he destroyed the natural elasticity of the wool. The threads had no room to breathe, flex, or hold air. During a sudden frost, as the damp fabric shrank in the cold shed, the tension became unbearable. With a loud, sickening tear, a massive ceremonial wall hanging that Kenji had worked on for months snapped along its center warp, its crushed fibers splitting open into frayed, lifeless ruin. Kenji dropped the heavy iron comb onto the flagstones with a dull, metallic clang. He sank to his knees beside the torn wall hanging, his chest heaving, tears streaming down his face into the wet sawdust. He pressed his palms against his eyes, crying out to the empty shed that his memories were failing, that he could not protect his father's legacy, and that time was destroying everything he tried to hold dear. He felt completely helpless, consumed by the terrifying belief that his mind was losing its grip on the past. Sitting nearby on a low timber bench, quietly carding a bundle of raw white fleece, was Master Shin, an old wool carder and keeper of the village looms. Master Shin had worked the river dye sheds for over 50 years. His hands were stained deep walnut brown, his knuckles swollen from decades of cold water. Yet his movements were light, fluid, and remarkably precise. He had observed Kenji's heavy-handed pounding for weeks, waiting for the young man's desperate grip to break. Master Shin set down his carding paddles. He walked slowly over to his tool chest, pulled out a beautifully balanced birchwood reed comb, equipped with carved bone teeth, and handed it to the kneeling young man. Master Shin gestured toward a fresh loom frame standing near the open river window, where a simple warp of natural linen was stretched tight. He picked up a soft skein of matted wool, laid the first strand through the warp, and asked Kenji to take the birchwood comb. Master Shin asked Kenji to pack the thread down using only the natural weight of his hand, without striking or forcing the wood. Kenji's hands trembled as he held the smooth birchwood tool. He looked at the torn, rigid fabric on the floor, then looked at the soft red wool resting in the frame. He raised the birchwood comb, paused, drew a long, quiet breath, and brought the bone teeth down softly against the thread with a light, rhythmic tap. The bone teeth guided the matted fiber gently into place. The thread settled snugly against the row below, but because Kenji had not crushed the yarn, the wool retained its soft loft, holding pockets of air within its weave. Master Shin reached out his stained fingers, pressing the newly woven section gently. The fabric yielded under his thumb, springy, warm, and resilient, bouncing back instantly into its natural shape. Master Shin sat down beside Kenji on the wooden bench, watching the cold river mist drift through the open window. He asked the young dyer why he believed a memory had to be beaten into stone to remain real. Master Shin placed his hand over Kenji's stiff wrist. He told Kenji that his suffering did not come from the passing of his father, nor did it come from the fading of yesterday. It came from his own angry attempt to crush living memories into a rigid iron mold, demanding that the past remain frozen, instead of allowing it to soften into the fabric of who he was today. Master Shin explained that a true craftsman does not beat wool into a hard board. He uses a light birchwood comb with bone teeth, giving the fibers space to interlock softly, allowing the tapestry to retain its warmth, loft, and flexibility. Memory is not preserved by clutching the past with iron force. True memory lives like soft, felted wool, yielding to the passage of time while keeping the heart warm against the present cold. Kenji sat in the quiet daished, his fingers resting against the bone teeth of the birchwood comb. He looked at the soft red thread in the loom, then looked out at the dark river flowing past the window. A deep, quiet shift occurred in his chest. He did not magically stop missing his father, nor did his grief over the past vanish in a single breath. But the terrifying panic surrounding his fading memories lost its sharp, paralyzing hold. He saw that his father's love was not a fragile thread that had to be beaten into stone, but a warm, enduring fiber already woven into the very fabric of his hands. Kenji took a slow, deep breath. Letting his tight shoulders drop away from his ears, he reached down, picked up the heavy iron comb he had used in anger, and placed it on a high shelf in the back of the shed, choosing not to use its brutal weight again. He turned back to the loom, raised the birchwood tool, and began to pack the next row of wool with a gentle, steady, and forgiving hand. The quiet picture of Kenji setting the heavy iron comb onto the high shelf inside the river dye shed reveals a profound truth about how our minds manufacture our deepest daily suffering. So much of our chronic, late-night exhaustion comes from a subtle, deeply ingrained belief that our safety depends on beating our memories and relationships into rigid stone. We take every natural transition, every silver hair, and every fleeting season, and we turn it into an urgent crisis that must be fought through intense mental force. We convince ourselves that if we just pound the thread hard enough, panic over the ticking clock, or refuse to forgive the passage of time, we can somehow trick impermanence and force our life to stay frozen in place. This urge to compulsively control the moving hours is often driven by a hidden terror of being left empty and cold. When a loved one ages, or a sweet era reaches its natural end, our internal alarm system fires immediately. We replay past moments where time seemed to stand still, rehearse terrifying future scenarios where we are left entirely alone, and attempt to fix our internal panic by treating our present hours like fragile objects that must be locked in a vice. We begin to view the passage of time as a personal enemy, turning our temporal grief into our permanent identity. We stop experiencing ourselves as living, loving human beings, and begin viewing our life as a vanishing resource that must be guarded with desperate vigilance. Yet this habit of pounding our moments with iron force is a form of subtle internal violence that turns simple life changes into chronic, soul-crushing grief. When you refuse to let your awareness yield to the moving shuttle, you are secretly operating from a mindset of deep panic. You begin to define yourself through your fear of loss alone, turning your sorrow into a heavy suit of armor that separates you from the warmth of the present moment. You stop sitting with those you love in gentle presence and begin watching them through a haze of preemptive mourning, grieving their absence while they are still sitting right beside you in the room. Buddhist wisdom offers a gentle, illuminating mirror that exposes this subtle trap without any judgment or scolding. It asks us to look closely at the vital difference between the natural shifts life brings and the heavy, extra suffering our own minds create through resistance, panic, and self-blame. Living in a world made of soft, changing fiber means that you will naturally encounter moments where seasons turn, strength shifts, and time moves its threads across the frame. That initial transition is a simple, neutral reality of residing in an interconnected temporal universe. However, the agonizing, sleepless panic that keeps your chest tight at midnight is not the passage of time itself. It is the extra misery created by your decision to treat impermanence as a tragic flaw, grabbing heavy iron tools to pound the fabric because you are terrified of the spool running low. It is like a weaver who feels an autumn draft entering the workshop, and instead of using a light birchwood comb to gently settle the soft yarn into a dense, warming blanket, grabs a heavy iron mallet and smashes the warp until the wooden frame breaks, weeping because his hands are bruised and his house is freezing. The autumn draft is the initial reality of the season. The shattered frame, broken threads, and weeping despair are the secondary suffering created entirely by his refusal to let the thread weave its natural shelter. Peace does not arrive when you somehow manage to stop the clock and make time stand still forever. Real freedom begins the very second you lay down the iron tool, step back from the loom, and let your moments lay down softly into the warp. The river of time will continue to move forward as it always has. You can cherish your loved ones with deep, attentive tenderness today, but beating the living fabric of your life in anger will never make the spool grow larger. Consider how much of your internal weight comes from attempting to force an unyielding rigidity upon a life that was designed to be a warm, flexible tapestry. We collapse into late-night sorrow because we falsely believe that the unwinding thread is an act of total destruction. But your true nature is not a rigid piece of stone that snaps under tension. Your awareness is like the vast, sheltering timber loom house itself, rooted, warm and broad, holding every moving thread and every changing season without being broken by the frost outside. When you surrender the impossible demand to freeze the moving hours, a massive weight dissolves from your chest. The tight, guarded muscles around your throat, ribs, and lower back, which have been strained for years to maintain a posture of constant resistance, can finally begin to soften. Your lungs find room to draw a deep, unhurried breath of cool night air. You begin to understand that offering your moments a light, bone-toothed comb, allowing your days to interlock softly into a dense, resilient weave, is not an act of shameful surrender. It is the fundamental foundation of true spiritual peace. You are fully permitted to be a soft, felted tapestry that yields gently to the changing weather, rather than a rigid board that snaps under cold pressure. Your value as a living human being was never bound to the ability to halt the clock or preserve every hour in static stone. You were born with a precious, sacred life force, meant to inhabit every passing moment with dignity, capable of sheltering a deep, quiet warmth within your woven heart tonight. As you lie here in the dark, feeling the cool air move softly across your skin, notice when your mind attempts to pull you back into its old iron calculations. It might whisper that time is stealing your life, or that you must fight harder tomorrow to protect your memories from fading. Observe that thought with soft, unhurried presence. You do not need to fight the thought, nor do you need to obey its frantic commands. You can simply view it as a stray fiber floating through the air, carrying no power to break the warm, dense fabric, holding your rest. This wisdom of placing a light bone-toothed comb against your daily thread, letting your moments lay down softly into the warp without pounding them into rigid stone, belongs directly inside the small modern moments of your routine. It finds its truest purpose during those quiet hours, when your mind starts frantically trying to catch the moving shuttle in midair. Consider how easily this habit of fighting the passage of time shows up on a completely ordinary morning. You sit at your kitchen table, watching a loved one move across the room, and suddenly notice a new line around their eyes or a slight hesitation in their step. A cold spike of anxiety pierces your chest. Instead of being fully present in that shared moment, your mind immediately leaps years into the future, rehearsing painful departures, mourning a loss that has not happened, and leaving you feeling hollowed out before breakfast has even ended. You pick up your phone, scrolling through old photos from years ago, desperately trying to clutch at who they used to be, feeling a heavy, quiet panic that the best years are already behind you. In that exact moment, when your thumbs linger over a screen, you are reaching for heavy iron tools to pound the fabric of your life. But wisdom offers you a quiet, spacious alternative before you obey that anxious reflex. You can set the phone face down on the table. You can feel the warmth of the mug in your hands, look directly into your loved one's eyes, and listen to the sound of their voice right now. Choosing to offer your gentle, unhurried presence in this present hour is how you settle a thread of amber wool into the weave with a light bone-toothed comb. It is a brave, quiet decision to inhabit the living warmth of today, trusting that love is not preserved by freezing the clock, but by honoring the fiber passing through your hands right now. Or think about those heavy evenings when you carry an exhausting guilt for wanting to rest without earning it through total collapse. You lie on the sofa after a long, demanding day, feeling a deep ache in your bones. Yet the moment your body settles, an internal voice begins to scold your quietness. It asks why you are not producing more, compares your achievements to peers online, and insists that sitting still while the hours slip away is an unforgivable waste of your limited time. You force a cheerful expression when family members walk past, hiding your deep emotional fatigue behind a tight mask, terrified to let anyone see that your inner spool is running low. When those waves of temporal panic threaten to ruin your evening, you can choose to stop treating your need for rest as a moral failure. You do not need to prove your value by driving heavy iron mallets through your tired frame like an angry weaver. You can allow your awareness to rest like a warm, felted blanket draped across a timber bench, holding its quiet loft without apologizing for its thickness. Giving yourself permission to set down your task lists, to decline an extra demand when your spirit is weary, or to lie still in the dark without solving your future, is how you allow your living wool to retain its natural warmth. Notice too how often you try to control a relationship by demanding that time stand still. You feel a friend drifting into a new phase of life, or a partner growing into new interests, and your stomach tightens into a hard knot. You double your efforts to hold them close, checking your phone constantly for reassurance, replaying recent conversations to see if you said something wrong, acting as if any shift in distance means total abandonment. You try to force absolute constancy by gripping the relationship with white knuckles, hoping that your constant vigilance will somehow protect you from the changing seasons of connection. Yet the hand-woven tapestry cradled in the mountain loom house does not earn its right to shelter the home by pretending the thread never moves across the frame. It holds its dense, protective structure precisely because every strand was allowed to cross the warp, interlock with its neighbors, and build a lasting warmth out of its own movement. Rest is not a prize awarded only to those who have managed to stop time. Rest is the fundamental, quiet foundation from which all deep presence emerges. Giving yourself full permission to lie flat in this dark room tonight, without holding back tomorrow or securing any future year, is how you align your heart with the timeless wisdom of the Loom. Living this path in your modern life does not mean you become careless with your time or distant from those you love. It expresses itself in the softest, most practical choices of your afternoon. It is taking a slow breath before reacting with fear to a subtle change. It is choosing to sit beside an aging parent without bringing your future grief into the room. It is the quiet, gentle understanding that your life is not a vanishing resource that must be hoarded, but a rich, unfolding fabric that knows how to shelter every hour it touches right now. You do not need to master this fluid presence by tomorrow morning. The Zen path is not about instantly erasing every old habit of temporal fear that made you grip the shuttle in the past. It is simply about noticing the moment your fingers reach for the heavy iron mallet out of panic, and gently choosing to lay the tool on the workbench instead. When you practice living as a soft, resilient tapestry rather than a rigid board of crushed fiber, your daily life recovers a quiet, unshakable dignity. You can offer deep, attentive care to your loved ones today, moving with a softer, wiser rhythm, and then step back into your quiet center when the day is done. You step out of the exhausting role of the panicked overseer, returning to your true nature as a wise weaver who knows how to honor every thread crossing the frame and how to yield to time with equal peace. As these late hours settle softly over your home right now, allow these simple truths to cool the remaining friction in your spirit. You have carried enough heavy iron tools across flagstone floors today. You have pounded your living thread enough to satisfy the world's demands. The long day of fighting the clock, hiding your fatigue, and mourning the future has fully retreated into the dark. The night has opened a vast, peaceful sanctuary around your bed, offering a shelter where no hour needs to be captured, no thread needs to be trapped, and no heart needs to be forced. Feel the easy, natural movement of your chest continuing its silent work in the dark. Cool air fills your lungs, lifting your ribs slightly, and flows out with a long, soft fall. You are completely permitted to set down your boxwood shuttles and iron combs for the night. You are allowed to let every fear of aging, every grief over time, and every panic about the future dissolve into the wide, dark stillness outside your room. The solid, unmoving timber of your bed is resting beneath you, broad and strong, ready to hold your entire weight without asking for a single pass of the thread tonight. Now let every boxwood shuttle, every bronze spindle, and every heavy iron comb dissolve into the soft indigo shadows along the mountain loom house. The quiet journeys of Ren watching the amber wool settle into the warp, and Kenji, guiding the matted thread with the light birchwood tool, have completed their steady work inside your spirit. They are no longer distant parables told in a river valley, but are soaking down like warm chestnut tea sinking into raw fleece, settling deep into the quiet heartwood of your awareness. The frantic pounding against time has stopped. The wooden treadles have found their peaceful, natural alignment. The handloom rests motionless in the dark, leaving your hands soft, cool, and resting unburdened upon the sheets. Your physical frame is becoming deeply, deliciously heavy against the steady mattress beneath you. Feel your upper back, your ribs, and your hip bones yielding their last subtle resistance, sinking half an inch deeper into the soft bedding. Your eyelids feel weighted, smooth, and fully relaxed, as if a gentle mist of wool dye and mountain air had brushed over your forehead, clearing away every remaining trace of temporal panic and future grief. The subtle tightness around your jaw, neck, and chest dissolves completely, allowing your airway to open into an easy, spacious passage where the night air moves softly, carrying no need to hold back the clock or freeze a single moment tonight. Every breath you take now is growing slower, softer, and completely silent. A quiet stream of air enters, lifting your chest like a soft thread of amber wool lifting gently off a spool, and then glides out like a light fiber laying down smoothly into a warm weave. Inhale, slow, smooth, and effortless. Exhale, long, quiet, and uncalculated. You are not measuring the length of your days. You are simply letting your living awareness breathe itself, natural, unforced, and completely content within its current fabric. Picture a dense, hand-woven wool blanket draped over a low timber bench in a high mountain loom house at midnight. Outside, the cold alpine wind whistles softly through the pine needles, touching the timber walls without causing a single draft inside the room. Deep within the shelter, the air remains warm, peaceful, and fully enclosed, smelling faintly of dried indigo leaves, cedar smoke, and steeping chestnut tea. There are no iron mallets striking the warp, no panicked hands holding the shuttle, and no winter storms cold enough to split the felted wool. The broad blanket rests thick, soft, and heavy in the lantern light, keeping the entire house warm while the starlit night moves through the mountain canyon outside. Inside your own heart, that exact same unbothered, felted warmth is quietly resting right now. The sharp, cold panic over passing hours and fading memories has dissolved into the dark air. It has drifted out through the timber rafters, carried away into the vast mountain night where no life needs to stand still to be deeply cherished. You do not need an unyielding, static world to feel safe tonight. You do not need to freeze the frame to prove your love is real. The vast night is broad enough to enclose every passing season, and quiet enough to let your spirit rest without fighting a single tick of the clock. Feel the deep heaviness in your thighs, knees, and ankles, melting into the supportive bed beneath you. Feel your feet and toes resting motionless upon the sheets, completely freed from the long days of chasing fleeting moments across stone floors. There are no passing hours you must trap in this dark room tonight, no loved ones you must shield from aging, and no winter wind cold enough to penetrate the warm tapestry resting beneath your head. You have returned home to the quiet, felted sanctuary that was always yours. Give your mind total permission to drop its long, exhausting surveillance. You do not have to solve the mystery of impermanence. You do not need to figure out how to preserve every memory before morning comes. Those tasks belong to the distant daylight outside, and you are resting far inside the loom house now, where iron tools hold no meaning and catching the shuttle is no longer required. If a stray fear of the future or a quiet grief over a changing season floats through the dark, let it be like a loose bit of lint drifting off a weaver's apron, touching the cool floor briefly before dissolving into the dark shadows. You do not need to pick up the heavy comb. You do not need to reach for the iron bar. You can simply watch the fiber drop away, leaving your inner tapestry dense, warm, and completely untouched. The night has built a quiet shelter around your bed, protecting your physical weariness from the relentless calculations and temporal dread of the world outside. The morning will arrive in its own time, bringing its own light and its own gentle weave to your hands. But tonight belongs entirely to rest. Tonight is a sacred sanctuary where your spirit is permitted to set down its spools, uncurl its white knuckles, and sink into the rich, unhurried ease of your own woven heart. You are safe here in the quiet dark. Your chest knows how to breathe without a frozen clock. Your mind knows how to rest without apologizing for the passing hours. Your soul knows how to surrender when the heart finally stops fighting time and lets the tapestry hold its warmth in peace. Let yourself sink down through the soft, dark layers of sleep, floating down into the deep, quiet bedrock where no thread is lost, where no moment is trapped, and where your true nature rests forever woven, whole and profoundly at peace. When the warm wool blanket shelters the quiet room through the coldest mountain night, does the thread ever grieve for the spool it left behind? The quiet silence of the loom house expands into every corner of your dark room, carrying a deep, motionless stillness that envelops your entire frame. In the gentle darkness, the unspun fleece resting in the wooden bins does not worry about when it will be dyed, nor does it panic over the changing seasons waiting outside the timber door. It rests softly in its natural warmth, waiting for nothing, demanding nothing, and needing no proof of its purpose. When you stop treating the passage of hours like a fading flame, your mind returns to that same unbothered ancient innocence. The moments you live today were not lost as they moved into the past. They were simply woven into the deep fabric of your being, becoming the very substance of your capacity to care, to understand, and to offer quiet sanctuary to yourself and others. Consider how a single thread woven into a tapestry does not stand alone. nor does it need to return to the boxwood shuttle to recover its value. Its purpose was fulfilled the very instant it crossed the warp, interlocking with the fibers beside it, giving strength and warmth to the entire cloth. When you look back upon your journey without the heavy fog of fear, you begin to see that every season you have lived through was necessary for the warmth you carry right now. The quiet joys, the sudden changes, the soft afternoons spent in gentle conversation, and even the moments of grief have all laid down their unique fibers within your chest. They have not left you hollowed out. They have made you dense, resilient, and deeply felted against the cold winds of life. Allow your physical body to sink even deeper into this felted sanctuary tonight. Feel the broad, steady mattress beneath you, holding your shoulders, your spine, your lower back, and your legs in total safety. Your lungs move air in a long, quiet cadence like the soft, rhythmic sigh of a mountain breeze moving across high cedar shingles. There is no need to monitor the passing hours in the dark. There is no need to calculate how much night remains before the sun appears. Time is moving softly, not as a thief taking away your existence, but as a quiet weaver guiding you into deeper restoration. You can let your awareness drop its sharp edge completely. You can let your thoughts uncurl softly, like loose strands of raw wool resting upon a smooth oak table. The dark air surrounding your bed is cool, grounding, and completely undisturbed. It carries no expectations, no heavy burdens, and no difficult questions for you to solve before morning arrives. In this quiet sanctuary, you are not an operator who must complete a project, nor a guard who must hold back the turning clock. You are simply a living presence, held softly within a vast interconnected tapestry of life that has known how to balance its threads for thousands of years. Everything that required your labor today has been set down outside the door. The loom house is quiet. The shuttle rests still inside its wooden groove, and the felted blanket covers your heart in complete, unshakable ease. Think of how the mountain forest outside the window enters winter without panic or argument. The white pine trees do not weep when their needles drop onto the dark soil, nor do the mountain streams fight the ice forming along their stone edges. They yield to the natural season with quiet dignity, trusting that the roots beneath the snow remain deep, strong, and completely unbroken. Your heart possesses that same innate wisdom. It knows how to yield to the passing hours without losing its core strength. It knows how to let go of yesterday while keeping the warmth of love alive inside your chest. You do not need to teach your soul how to adapt to impermanence. You need only to stop fighting the natural movement of the weave. Let the soft weight of your head melt deeper into your pillow. Let your neck, your jaw, and the delicate muscles around your eyes surrender every remaining trace of tension. Feel how quiet your breath has become, moving like a faint ripple across a shaded river pool, completely unhurried, peaceful, and smooth. Every inhalation brings cool, clean rest into your frame, and every exhalation releases the lingering urge to control tomorrow. You are fully permitted to lay down your vigilance. You are allowed to be tired, to be still, and to let the world carry on without your supervision tonight. As you drift closer to total sleep, feel the quiet comfort of knowing that your life is not an empty race against time. Your journey is a rich, ongoing creation, woven thread by thread through every act of care, every moment of patience, and every quiet breath you take in the dark. The people you love, the memories you cherish, and the quiet beauty you have witnessed are not lost behind you. They are woven into the very structure of who you are right now. You carry their warmth within your heart, thick, soft, and enduring, like a well-woven blanket that keeps out the coldest mountain frost. There's nothing left for you to fix, nothing left to protect, and nothing left to hold still. The wooden treadles are silent, the bronze spindle has finished its spinning, and the room is wrapped in deep, protective darkness. Let your awareness dissolve softly into the quiet stillness surrounding you. Let your body sink through the gentle layers of rest, supported by the solid earth beneath your home. Floating down into the deep, dark sanctuary of sleep, you are held, you are safe, and your woven spirit is completely at peace in the quiet night. The high cedar rafters above your room hold the quiet darkness with gentle strength, shielding your rest from the cold mountain wind that rustles through the pine needles outside. Beneath the timber roof, the air remains soft, still and fragrant with the lingering scent of dried indigo and sweet cedar wood. Every corner of this space invites your spirit to step away from the world's demands, offering an unburdened sanctuary where no performance is expected and no time limits exist. You do not need to measure how deeply you are relaxing, nor do you need to evaluate the quietness of your mind. Simply resting here in the soft dark, feeling the rise and fall of your chest, is more than enough to nourish your weary frame. Notice how the gentle rhythm of your breathing feels like a quiet loom moving in total harmony with the night. Inhaling softly brings a fresh thread of calm air into your lungs, and exhaling softly settles that thread into the deep, resting fabric of your body. With every quiet breath, your muscles grow heavier, your thoughts grow lighter, and the boundary between your awareness and the peaceful darkness around you begins to soften. You are surrounded by a deep, protective quiet that holds no fear of tomorrow and no regret over yesterday. Everything is still, everything is resting, and the vast starlit sky above the canyon holds your life in complete safety. Let yourself float softly down into the dark, welcoming ocean of deep sleep. Feel your mind letting go of its last gentle thoughts like fine wool fibers floating away on a slow, peaceful current. There are no tasks waiting for you in the dark, no clocks to watch, and no worries to resolve before dawn arrives. You are resting inside your own completed weave, wrapped in the warm, enduring blanket of your own presence. Sleep comes naturally now, smooth, quiet, and profound, carrying your tired spirit into total rest.